What we're going to do today is give you an update on plain writing principles in the law. So if you write for the web, an intranet, blogs, newsletters, social media, anything involving the web, this class will allow you to use plain language so readers can actually read your content and get the information they need. Help your readers complete your top tasks if you're familiar with Jerry McGovern's top tasks theory. Understand how the Plain Writing Act of 2010 affects you and your job, or whether it does not. Sometimes it's an unpleasant surprise to find out that it doesn't. Find out where to get more training in plain language, and join the federal plain language community. So lots of possibilities here. What I'm going to talk about now is what is plain language. There's a lot of debate about it and some working definitions, but the most consistent definition that we've found internationally as well as nationally is that plain language is a style of communication that allows readers and hearers to quickly find what they need, understand what they read or hear, and use what they read or hear to fulfill their needs the first time they read or hear it. Now that's important. It won't be in plain language if you have to read it 36 times. I mean, that's just not going to work. If you can't find it, if it's in a footnote on page 72, a 148-page PDF, that's not plain language. That's really not helping. You may find different terms. Some people say plain language. Some people say plain writing, as in the law. Some people say clear communication. Some people say plain English. But mostly these are all meaning the same thing. And it's particularly important on the web because people move fast on the web. You don't have a great deal of time to get their attention. And, clarity of language, clarity of message is going to be very helpful. So this slide came up from a number of classes that I've had where people kept saying, well, I thought plain language was this or that, and I just started listing them because I thought it was rather interesting. Plain language is not writing in baby talk. It's not trying to be folksy or colloquial or playful or politically correct. None of those have anything to do with plain language. Plain language has nothing to do with stripping out necessary technical and legal information. Now notice the word necessary. Sprinkling legal terms into your writing does not make it legal writing. It often just makes it confusing and hard to understand. It's not a final step. Although, I'll tell you, I have been given things as the last step saying, hey, make this plain language. And, after a short discussion, we, see what we can do to improve it. But it's not something that you do at the end. It's not a style guide issue. Plain language is not writing imprecisely. In fact, I would say that plain language is more precise. It's not just one step, like using pronouns in a Q&A format. That may be a tool that you can use to reach plain language, but it's not the only thing. There's not only one step. It's not something the lawyers, the Federal Register, OMB will never go for. Actually, we have a huge number of supporters in all of those areas. Many lawyers, there's international organizations for lawyers to talk about plain language and see about how they can do it. Most of our more powerful supporters are in fact writing from legal. And it's also not easy. Plain language is not easy. I wish it were. A colleague of mine used to say, it would be so nice if we had a plain language button on our keyboards. And I live for that. I think that would be great. You just hit the button and it plainifies or whatever it does. But haven't seen it. Haven't seen that any more than I've seen the easy button, although I would like to, as I've said. So bear these things in mind when we discuss plain language and see where plain language fits for you. Big question is always what governs plain language, and that is the Plain Writing Act of 2010, which said that all new government documents, there's no grandfathered I mean, you don't have to go back and fix old documents, but all new government documents that meet the following criteria must be written in plain language. And the deadline for that was October 13th, 2011. So that was, a couple years ago. We're past that deadline right now. So if you have documents that are necessary to get government benefits or services or for filing taxes, plain language. Documents that provide information about federal benefits or services, plain language. Documents that explain to the public how to comply with a federal requirement, plain language. So if you're working with citizens, if you're working with the public, if you're working with everybody outside of your own agency, plain language is required. Paper, electronic letters, publications, forms, notices, instructions, anything. Generous permission, any document, any government document. So OMB provided final guidance on April 13th, 2011. And another supporter of this governance is the PLAIN Network, the Plain Language Action and Information Network. As Janelle said, I'm co-chair, and it was founded in the mid-1990s with the goal of using plain language for all government communications. And they're responsible for two things, essentially making sure that we offer free half-day training to federal agencies for plain language, and maintaining the federal plain language guidelines. I have a link further down on this, but that's the main two purposes of plain. And they worked on that final guidance for OMB. So what are the benefits? Why are you being asked to write things in plain language? Well, it's an essential part of open government. We're also seeing that creating documents using plain writing, plain language, can reduce agency costs. It shows that you have a customer focus, an increasingly important element in government communications. It helps you communicate effectively because you're organizing your information for the reader. That is possibly the most important part of plain language. It breaks down barriers. One of the things that, as a co-chair, I get is a lot of the emails to plain, and a lot of them are, I can't understand Medicaid, I can't understand Veterans Affairs, I can't understand the letters I received from the taxes. Can you help us? And unfortunately, we can't. I mean, plain can't. And we have to say, well, here are the plain contacts for the agencies. Maybe they can help you or get you to someone. But, I mean, we really get a sense that people are getting information they can't understand. And the dangers of that are they don't comply with it, they don't understand it, or they do something wrong. And then that sets up a whole sequence of events. You have to have more letters, you have to have telephone calls, you have to have face-to-face meetings, and those really do take up a lot of time, a lot of staff resources, when if you could, as it were, nip it in the bud and get it right the first time, people would do what you need them to do. There's also, as I said, there's customer service. Executive Order 13571, I finally got the number in there, streamlining service delivery and improving customer service. Government managers must learn what's working in the private sector. A lot of what is working in the private sector is self-service. The more the government, the more companies can put on the web for self-service, the cheaper it is. So if they can make it available to you on the web, you don't have to email, you don't have to call. So that is another reason for plain language writing on government websites, to make it clear what people can do. So what are the ways that we go about this? Well, we don't have time in an hour's webinar to talk about all of the plain language techniques on the lists. And these aren't even all of them, but there are a few that are particularly important to writing on the web. The most important, the absolutely most important, is identify your audience and organize content for them. What do your readers want to do? For example, in where I work, in GSA and Technology Division, we sell IT to the rest of the federal government. we have two main audiences. We have business partners, or industry partners, that is vendors who want to work with us, and our customers, that is other federal agencies. Those are two really distinct audiences. They don't at all want the same information. So you have to make sure that you've organized content for the right audience, and that one is there. As on the website, as on any website, using design features to make it easy to scan. People scan on the web, and a lot of that scanning is coming offline. It's happening with magazines and newspapers and things like that. So offline behaviors are starting to, online behaviors are starting to drive offline as well. Keep your sentences and paragraphs short. Don't get people confused with what's going on. Use pronouns, active voice, and verbs. That's another good technique for web writing. Choose simple everyday words so that people don't stop when they're reading and say, I wonder what that means. I don't know what that means. Am I on the right page? And of course, trim excess content. All of these are what will really help your web writing allow people to do what they've come to your pages to do. Except for maybe two agencies, none of us have fan clubs, and people come to government websites to do things. Now, the two fan clubs that I can think of are, national parks, people want to see the pictures, and NASA, people want to read about space. The rest of us, people are coming to do stuff. So, as I said, people don't really read on the web. They scan. They scan to see, is this the right page? Is this where I'm going to get the information? And so you've got a couple of different things working here. One of the things you have to make sure is that your titles echo what's on the page, and as you're linking, that you're using descriptive link language. I think I have a little bit more on that later on. But people don't read, they scan, so you have to make things short and you have to make things distinctive. So for that, you would use, of course, identify your audience and organized content, but you'd also use design features and short content. And people will rarely read dense text anywhere. I have a couple of slides later on that are essentially what I call the wall of words. People take one look at that and think, there's not enough coffee in the world for me to look at this page. It's just too confusing. So they've done some eye-tracking research to see how people deal with dense pages. And it shows the usual F pattern. Some of you may have used Crazy Egg, or, if you have Google in-page analytics, you can see where are people going, what are they looking at. And generally, classic heat map. People are going down the left-hand side, and they're doing maybe a little bit in the middle. I've noticed that on the heat maps I've run, we have, anytime, this is the next one, anytime we have a bulleted list, people gravitate to that. People's eyes look at that. We might also have, headers or any big links, like if we're linking to a PDF. But what you really have is that left-hand side and then a little dab in the middle. Sometimes you have things over on the right, but generally right-hand zone is the dead zone. You put stuff there because people say it has to be up there, and you say, well, I'll put it on the right-hand side. So some sobering facts. This is some research from Nielsen. People read an average of 18% of what's on a page. That's not a lot. Those of you who devote a great deal of time to web content can, sob quietly at your desks. The more words you have on the page, the less the percentage that gets read. This is a paradox. But to get people to read half your words, you really have to limit your pages. I mean, if people are seeing, oh, this page is going on forever, it's scrolling, it's scrolling, it's scrolling, they're going to get lost, they're going to lose interest. So one of the things is you have to make sure people know what's going to be on the page. They have to see the limits of the page, and, what can they do with that information. So the biggest question is, who's your audience? That's always the biggest question in plain language and web writing, which big surprise, your audience is not your supervisor or your coworkers. It's always a huge surprise for some people. But what can you do to identify your audience? Well, check your analytics. Huge important step on this. We use Google Analytics here at GSA, and what we did with our analytics, a couple of rounds of this, is we look at what pages they're going to. You know, how long are people staying on those pages? Can you find out what they're doing on those pages? Are they emailing? Are they, clicking on an email? Are they downloading a document? We went through our entire file download report, looked at some that weren't getting downloaded maybe 6 times in the last month or so. And we're like, does this need to be here? Is this earning its keep? Is this worth the space it's taking up? I mean, these are the questions you have to ask. Essentially, a web page, a website is not a billboard. You don't throw everything up there. You have a purpose, you have a business goal for each piece of content, and if it doesn't meet that goal, it's off the island. So check your analytics, look where people are going, have your business goals, write for their audience, write for that audience, find out who's reading your content. You know, as I said before, I have the example. We have customers and, other federal agencies, and we have business partners, people in the industry. You know, they're an entirely different audience. They have entirely different goals for that. Why are they coming to your page? What do they need to know? What are they trying to do? Another very helpful thing is to check your search terms log. Just to find out, is new stuff at the top, or you have pretty much the consistent things that people are looking for. You know, if they're still looking for it, maybe you need to make it easier to find. You know, but I mean, these are the things that are always worth doing with web content, particularly in plain language. If people are, say, this is a different example, but if people are always looking for cars and on your website you're describing them as vehicles, you have a terminology problem. So what do customers want? What do your customers want? What do your readers want? People come to your site to perform a task, get something done, and they come because they hope to get it done by themselves. You know, so one of the questions you might want to test, and this is an excellent opportunity to consider usability testing, where you have, say, coworkers out of your division come over and say, hey, we're just trying this. Can you see if can you see if you can do these little tasks on the website? We're just trying to improve it. There's a whole methodology, of course, with that, which DigitalGov University has covered. But, I mean, that's really another way to find out. It's hard to look at your website clearly when you've been working on it forever. I mean, your mind fills in the blanks. It's very easy to lose perspective. So, if people can't complete their tasks or what they need to do on your website, they'll leave. One of the very useful things that we've done is we have a huge spreadsheet of all of our web pages, and we say, what is the business goal of this page? How will we measure that this page is successful? Now, that's not really a plain language issue, but it does help us focus the page to the audience, which is a plain language technique. Content your customers probably do not want. Really, think about this. When your office was formed, why would they care? Who is the head? People probably don't care about that. What the head said the day he was sworn in, not what the head looks like. You'd be amazed. What your annual report from 3 years ago looked like. How the Bureau is organized. That may be more appropriate for the intranet. What you did for customers 5 years ago. No. Current content. The text of a law that authorizes your office. Really, this is the sort of thing you have to say, who would want this? If we have this on now, are people going to that page? Are people finding this information useful? So, how does this help them do anything unless it's, of course, a research project? So another thing to consider on websites is what kind of page is it? And that's a really important question. And part of that is the difference between print and web. And print, tells a story, is linear. You generally have to start at the beginning, go on through the middle, stop at the end. You can take it on the metro, you can take it to coffee shops, you can take it to the park, you can read it in full sunlight, all of this, and mostly written in complete sentences. The web is a lot choppier. It also tells a story, but it's an easy to scan story. It's quick, uses minimal text, it's user friendly. Users can be stressed, impatient, skeptical, disoriented, battery die, all of those things may work, and it requires a certain interaction from the user. So, web has to compensate for a lot more than print does. And so these are the steps that we have to take to make it work. One of those things is to figure out what kind of page. There's three main types of pages, mostly. There are portals or home pages, connector or pathway pages. So I always think of them as sort of funneling pages. If you want this, go here. If you have this, go there. If you're looking to do something else, here's yet another one. And then the content pages themselves. And the content pages, that last page, are going to be the heaviest with content. The first two are really identifying. Like the first is, here's a page, here we are, here's all the things you can do if you want to do these things, and then down to, if you will, the meat of what you want to do. Think of these sorts of things. Think of topics. Where are people wanting to go? Do not make people read from the beginning of the page down to the end. Give them a way to scan. Give them headers. Give them sections. Have a conversation. Make it possible to engage with your reader. A very few content pages may contain more information. They may have more, for example, they may have more what I always call files or attachments. They might have an ordering guide. They may have instructions. They may have, things that people want to open up. So you'll also want to foreground your content. Those of you who took journalism, this is the sort of information you're looking for, the inverted pyramid. Start with the shortest and clearest statement about your topic. Conclusions, key info first, then the background. I can't tell you, there have been too many times I've gotten emails from various divisions that say, well, we conducted a pilot study to find out what kind of training you should have, and this is how many people participated, and this was the range of the survey, and this is the information we got. And honestly, I looked at that whole email that was one big block of text, and I said, all I care about is what I have to take. That's all I care about. I don't care about your pilot study. I don't care about the details. I assume you did one. I don't care about the details. What I want to know is the classes I have to take this year by the end of the fiscal year and the classes I have to take next year. That's all. So this requires a real effort to put yourself in your customers' or your readers' shoes and say, what do they need to know? Not what do I want to tell them. So these are some of the sample pages about well-organized content. How to get through the line faster. I'm going overseas next week. I really am going to look at this because I know I like the how to pack, how not to pack. That gives me a visual. I also know I'm going to have to look up the 3-ounce liquid gel rule because I can't remember it. But I mean, this is a page that says this is what it will help you do. Get through the line faster. That's what I care about, not comply with TSA safety, security, airline restrictions. I don't care about that. I care about getting through the line faster. So they've helped me do that. That is my task. Seconds count. First 11 characters of a page title are important. People decide in 5 seconds or less if your site is useful. Make sure that you're putting headers with your sections It helps people follow along. It's really a quick way of organizing material to get people to what they want. Here's another one. Not a perfect example, not a perfect screenshot by any means, but I can tell about us what we do. There's probably some other things, but that's at least the four things here. This is one of the wall of words that I've seen. This is just one big paragraph, and I can't tell what they do. I can't tell what they're going to help me do. This would be, I mean, there's guide words in here if you read through. There's in addition, there's furthermore, but what would really help is, you know, what it would help me do. What task are they going to help me? If this is just about, which is, you know, an organization, that needs to be in sections. It needs to be in different parts. So, I mean, oversees a number of high-profile processes and functions doesn't tell me a great deal. You know, so it needs to be in shorter paragraphs. It needs to be a lot more specific. So headers, lists, and tables are good ways of designing this content to make it easier to understand, to follow. Use headers or headings. Increases white space. It really doesn't help if you just have a big wall of words. I mean, people stop reading. I mean, it's too difficult. It's fatiguing to the eye and the brain. Using lists. Make it easy for the reader to see everything in a process. Add blank space. You can add space between items in a list. It helps also if you use numbers for steps in a process and bullets for everything else. You have to think about how you're ordering material, and you have to make it explicit. We have a big list of customer service managers, and I looked at the list and I said, how is this organized? Because it seemed to be all jumbled together. It was, you know, last names were up and down. The name of the agency contact was all, you know, I couldn't tell any kind of order. And they said, oh, it's in order by the key number. And I said, great. I'm so glad that there's some organization. Can you add a line that says it's in order by key number? Because people might know that right offhand. But, I mean, as I said, when you've been working on something, it is very difficult to see the faults in it because you're used to working with it and you know all of the back stuff. So, for example, here's one of those wall of words that's just hard to read, and it doesn't help that all of the material seems to be the same. Form I 800A, Supplement 1, Supplement 2. I mean, it's just awful. So, too long, didn't read. I mean, I'd really have to be desperate to know that information to follow it. Putting it in a list makes it a lot easier. Putting it in a table makes it even better, although I know that our friends in the mobile first would not be quite so happy because smartphones can display tables not quite as conveniently as laptops. So tables help save words. They make it easy to locate specific provisions, and you can take in complex material at a glance. They're particularly good if you have if-then. For those of you who do estimated payments, the IRS always has something that, you know, if you have to send in a quarterly payment, if you live in, and then they have a whole table of states. If you live in wherever, send yours to Pittsburgh. You know, I don't have to try and follow along with a ruler line by line to make it sense. I can just look for my state and where they want the money sent to. So keeping things short is also a key point in web writing. No one wants to read stuff like this. Nobody. I mean, this is just scary. You can look at it and say, well, you could probably divide it here in the middle with regard, and you've got some numbered lists here, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, so maybe you could move those out, but that's still really horrible. And in the context, all it needed was this. Instead of this, 2 lines with links. So, you know, one of the biggest aggregators of information on the web is links. Please use them. Use descriptive link language so people know what's going to happen when they click on them, but you don't have to repeat everything on your page, particularly if it belongs somewhere else. How would you shorten this? There is no escaping the fact that it is considered very important to note that a number of various available applicable studies ipso facto, there's sprinkling in legal terms again, have generally identified the fact that additional appropriate nocturnal employment could usually keep juvenile adolescents off thoroughfares during the night hours, including but not limited to the time prior to midnight on weeknights and or 2 a.m. on weekends. That was 62 words of gibberish. And a perfectly appropriate, more night jobs would keep youths off the streets. This doesn't impress anybody, it just confuses them. Using short paragraphs, limit your paragraph to one subject or step. Smaller bites or sections are easier to digest mentally. If you like a number, although I swear I'm not coming over to your agencies and counting your paragraphs for you, really, I'm not. 7 lines per paragraph, but eyeball it. See, are your paragraphs more or less, you know, the same size, or do you have a couple really long ones and then some teeny tiny short ones? Similarly with sentences, 1 subject per sentence, you know, don't make it confusing, don't make it complex. I've seen sentence length recommendations, 20 words or fewer in documents, in printed documents or documents that are supposed to be printed out, 15 or fewer on the web. Again, if you like the comfort of having a number. Pronouns, there's already a great barrier between citizens and the government. I once got a call from the IRS. This was pre-email days. There was a voicemail on my machine from the IRS, and they started with, "Don't worry." I mean, it's kind of like Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy, where they say, "Don't panic." And, you know, you really should not have government communications starting with, "Don't worry, this is just a, you know, routine inquiry." Of course, I was panicking for the rest of the night. But it turned out, you know, my bank hadn't sent in my mortgage statement, things like that, silly stuff. But I thought how awful that they have to start their messages with, "Don't be worried, don't panic." If we can help break down that barrier, we're more likely to help them. If we use language that they're used to seeing, it's more likely that they'll understand what we want them to do. You don't want your audience having to translate terms. Like I refinanced, this is, you know, not government, but I refinanced last year, and I was reading through all the huge amount of paperwork, and I kept thinking, well, which one am I? Which one am I again? I finally put it on Post-it notes because, you know, I'm not used to these terms, and my reading level, which is very high, completely drops in a field I'm not familiar with. So you might have people who are very, very smart in their own fields coming to something unfamiliar with a process they don't know, and I'll tell you, they have to ask the stupid questions, they have to ask the obvious questions because they don't understand. So pronouns will help break that down. That's using pronouns to speak directly to readers, make your writing relevant. It requires a lot less work, and it'll help you eliminate words, which is sort of a sneaky way of having shorter sentences and paragraphs. So writing directly is another very powerful thing. Passive verbs, hidden verbs, complex verb forms can make your writing weak and confusing. And unfortunately, it's notoriously part of government writing. One of the biggest things always, of course, is mistakes were made. Passive voice, who made these mistakes? Nobody. They just sort of happen. No one's to blame. No one's at fault. They just somehow got through security and, you know, mistakes. So what you want to make sure you're doing is writing an active voice. So in passive voice, the person doing the action follows the verb. So in Arlene was promoted by her boss, to make that active voice, it would be Arlene's boss promoted her. So you have very clearly in English, subject, verb, object. Someone is doing something. So that is the sort of thing you need to look for. This is definitely something to improve because this helps people understand who's doing what and what is, what are they responsible for doing. This merely repeats all of that information about active voice. Use your customer's language, use your reader's language. Avoid bureaucratic and legal language because it can really lead people astray. Limit your jargon and acronyms. When I was helping with a program that did usability testing for government agency websites, there was always a top 10, and often these 3 were in the top 5. Too much text, just too many words, period. Too much jargon and acronyms, using insider terms, using acronyms that more than one person, that more than one agency can use, and just using, words that people didn't understand. So ways to avoid that, to make your writing more useful, is, avoiding the foreign and Latin names, abbreviations, and use contractions, use everyday words, use descriptive link language to make it easier for people to understand what you're trying to convey. I often get emails, as I said, from Plain, because I get the sort of admin emails, and people say, people keep sending me letters from the government and they've got all kinds of typos. I mean, they capitalize federal, they capitalize government. And, we know that that's not strictly speaking a typo, it's a style guide issue. But to people who do not work in the government, they say, what a typo, or what an ego. And these are things you have to think about when you're appealing to or when you're communicating with a non-federal government reader. So the bureaucratic and legalistic language, I'm sure you've seen things like this: integrating quality solutions, strategically engaging, hereby, things like that. Long prepositional phrases, those can almost always be tightened. That's one step that can help your writing. One final sort of editing step. Use contractions. Instead of the needs of the customer's needs. Agency's mission, perfectly grammatically correct, works on the web. Descriptive link language. This is an important information, particularly on the web, because linking is so important. Make your links distinctive and consistent. Don't just say click here, but excuse me, give them something, give them language that lets them know. Instead of download the guidelines or download this report, say download the Alliant 2 ordering guidelines. Because then they'll know exactly what they're getting. If they're downloading a lot of stuff and they're using assistive technology and you've just used click here or download this or view this report or anything like that, what they'll end up is a whole stack of links that all say click here, click here, click here. If you can say, download the ComSatCom ordering guidelines or ComSatCom industry partner list or whatever, they'll know exactly what's in what they're supposed to download. So that's a very important point for web writing, to make sure that you're using descriptive link language. So some of the things you can do with your web content. As I said, look at your analytics for whatever your most frequently visited pages or your most frequently downloaded documents. What are your audiences? What type of people come and use your website? Have you scrubbed your pages for jargon? Program names, acronyms, technical words, org speak. To do, try and get people outside of your organization to help you with it. Have you looked for out-of-date content? Make sure none of it needs to be there. Are you making sure you have goals for all of your pages? so people can complete whatever task is available to them. Are your pages still useful? We were redoing some pages for cybersecurity, and we found out that they had 4 welcome pages, and we said, pick one. Pick one. You can't have 4. You can only have 1. And that's, I mean, as I said, people often treat websites as billboards. They just start pinning stuff up, and then they have to say, oh, we do have 4 welcome pages. I wonder how that happened. People just put pages up. So sometimes you have to step back and say, what do we have here? Why do we have it? Do you need something about program history? Is anyone likely to have that? Does that belong somewhere else? So, I mean, these are the questions you need to ask of your content. Some of the things you can do: work on your key content, public-facing documents. The Plain Writing Act of 2010 does not apply to the intranet or to emails, which I think is so unfair. You can read and apply the federal plain language guidelines. They're on plainlanguage.gov. I'll make sure they're in the email that we send out to you. You can join the Plain Language Action and Information Network if you'd like to know more about that. And you can take more classes from DigitalGov University and look at some of the material they already have recorded on those pages. So, okay, here you have it. There's some online training. National NIH has one. I think it's plainlanguage.nih.gov. If medical stuff doesn't make you horribly queasy, as it does me, it's a really good course. I'm just warning you. You may need to know about that. Jenny Reddish has a volume 2 of Letting Go the Words, Writing Web Content That Works. It's a really good way of getting introduced again to web content. And Janelle, do we have any questions?
We do. We have several questions. So as a reminder, if you have questions, please type them in the chat box and we'll get to as many questions as we can. So thanks, Catherine. You packed a lot into 45 minutes. So very helpful tips. I guess let's start broadly. If an agency is starting out with a plain language program or trying to review their content to ensure that it's in plain language, what are, your top 3 tips, or how do you get started on that? It can seem overwhelming.
Mm-hmm. Very much overwhelming. I think that the most important, step is to look at where are people going. Look at your analytics. I mean, don't go after the page that, 20 people visit and they're all internal. I mean, that's not going to give you a big bang for your buck, as it were. Look at your analytics. See what your most visited pages are. See the pages that have a big stake, depending on what your agency is. We always want to make sure that our contracts pages, we want to make sure people can order from us. I mean, that is an absolute business goal right there. People have to be able to order. You might also, depending on your agency, you might want to look at your call center or see what kind of emails you're getting. I mean, we have one of those Rate This Page surveys on our site, and it says, did this page help you make your acquisition? And we don't actually get a lot of good information about that, but what we do get is, I was expecting something else from this page. It reports every page. I was expecting something else, or I was really surprised not to have that. And that's useful to know as we look at, the language we're using, the terms we're using.
Okay, thank you. That's helpful. I know, like I said, it can be overwhelming, but if you focus on those key pages, I think
focus on the top 10. Start there, and then do the next 10. I mean.
So you talked about writing for your audience and identifying that. Can you talk about some tips and techniques for writing for a science-based audience?
That question comes up all the time. One of the things that some of the techniques I've heard other agencies use, because this does come up a lot, is having plain language summaries or abstracts of their information. And that's a huge step, because what I think some of these agencies found is people were not going to the full reports. They just wanted to know, is this the report I want? And so one of the steps was simply, a standardized format where you had say a website, you had the title, you had the category, you had the title, you had the names of the authors, and then you had a plain language abstract or summary statement that, you know, explained what it was about and what people would learn if they looked into it. So I think that's a good interim step. I know there's a lot of people working with scientists and researchers, and there's various degrees of resistance, you know, like lawyers, various degrees of resistance to plain language, but that is an excellent step at least to start with. You know, at least, and it's sort of like, if you will, it's like the descriptive link language where people say, oh, it's about that. I thought it was about this. I don't need to open that report and be confused. I can tell what this is going to be about. So, I mean, that's I think, the best step to do first in the step of, in the case of clarity. And the next steps are continuing to work and negotiate, see if you can start with friendly people and, you know, focus on your best writers and then, you know, keep working your way. One of the things that might be helpful for working with that is get a few spearhead people, you know, people who are willing to work with you on that, and have a brown bag, have a webinar. Make a case study, make a paper out of it, you know, how we did this. Talk to me about hosting a plain language meeting about that. Oops, everyone can see my calendar. How could this happen? Darn calendar. So good luck with that project.
And speaking of writing for an audience, and that question was more about a scientific audience, mm-hmm. I've heard the question come up, and this has come up in the questions we've received today, about writing at an 8th grade level. Can you kind of speak to that?
Okay. I think a lot of this happens first in newspapers and magazines and journals, where they say, you know, they're sort of measuring literacy from a profit motive, which is fine. But government agencies really can't say, you know, we're writing to a certain grade level, because readability, Kincaid or the Gunning Fog Index, they don't guarantee plain language. They can guarantee, because they're generally factors of how many words with many syllables do you have, how many long words do you have, and how long are your sentences. It's a factor of that. And if you jigger those, you can bring your score down. However, there are many short words that are just as confusing as long words. And so, I mean, it's an important indicator. I know that at a previous agency, we had one group that just absolutely refused to write to what we were using at the time, which was like a 6th to 8th grade level, just as a ballpark. And we used that more as an indicator of some more work needed to be done on these pages, rather than we want them specifically at this grade level. Because these people, this group's material was coming in at like 24, 26, and that's all we needed. Is we said, you know, rest of the website is written at this level, you know, with this kind of material. Yours is coming in at 24. Now, we can't guarantee that only the people who will understand your content are coming to it. So this is what we used. And it still wasn't fantastic content, but it was at least more in line with the rest of the site. And sometimes, you know, if you're taking a look at it from the enterprise level, you really have to say, no, you don't get to go play by yourself. You have to play in the big sandbox with everybody.
So someone, an attendee, put in a tip, more so than a question, that she's found that the Hemingway app tool can be very helpful. Are you familiar with that? I
have heard of it. We cannot recommend any software or app over another, but I'm very glad that people are finding things that are useful.
Yeah, no, that makes perfect sense. Can you talk about who the Plain Language Act applies to? A question came in about, does it apply to the local government, or is it just federal?
You know, that's very interesting. Plain focuses on, and when I say Plain, I mean the Plain Language Action and Information Network, the Plain group, focuses on the federal level. plain language in itself is an international movement, and there are many states that are now signing plain language into law. I'm going to completely mess these up because I haven't been keeping track, but I think it's Minnesota. I think California just did something with ballots. So, I mean, they may have like partial plain language. And I think a couple of months ago I spoke to someone in Oregon who said healthcare had gotten like a plain language law in Oregon, and they were trying to figure out how to go about it. So local governments can pass whatever laws they like, as far as I know. I don't know how much support is out there for them for that. I mean, people often ask, can you come and teach us at the state and local level and the cities? And we're like, no. But we do have some information available, and we share the videos and the DigitalGov University things that we've done already.
Great. And just a reminder to everyone that we did record today's presentation, or we are recording it, and we will send you all the link to the recording and also post it on our DigitalGov video library. So if you have colleagues who weren't able to join us, we'll send you that link. And then also, a lot of people are asking if they can get copies of the slides. So
oh, absolutely. Yeah. If you want to send them out or with the survey, I think would be fine.
Definitely. So look out for those slides as well, since there's a lot of good resources and examples. Excuse me. So let's just go through more questions. Do you have any advice on how to convince management that it's worth investing the time on promoting plain language in an agency's writing?
Ice cream always helps, and chocolate cookies and donuts. No. I think that appealing to them for the sake of language itself is not really going to work. I mean, as a strategy. I mean, you might hit it lucky with people who are interested in it already. But I think that what you have to appeal to is this solves a problem. And it's, you know, even better if you can say this solves a big problem. And that's why I say, you know, take a look at your analytics. Where are people going? Is that where you want them to go? Check with your call center. What are people calling about? Is there an easy fix that you could do on the web that would make some of those calls go away? I mean, because there's always going to be calls. If you can make them not be the same call, you know, that's a big help, at least for your coworkers, if not for the managers. I think it starts boiling down to, can you get people to have business goals for their web pages? And that's a big concept. I mean, that's a big leap for a lot of people because, you know, there's still billboard mentality. Oh, just put it up on the web, the people will find it. And we know that doesn't work. One thing that I've done is there was some content I wasn't particularly happy about, and I gave it 6 months, and then I ran 6 months worth of data and in-page analytics, and I sent it to the owner and said, this is where people are going on your microsite, your web pages. Is this where you want them to go? And he was like, no, I want them to be doing other things. I'm like, let's talk about that. Let's set out a meeting. Let's see where I think people are going astray. You know, this is what I think might be confusing people, or you know, they don't need that information. And seeing that information, just spreadsheets and, you know, screenshots, meant that he sat down and really looked at the content and thought, you know, this is not what I want it to be. I want people to do something else. And so that was really remarkably effective. But just appealing to people's sense of language, no. Put it as part, and it's an important part of customer service, though, or the customer experience, or, you know, however you want to phrase it, and you might get a better job. Also, if they're moving to self-service on the web, yeah, you know, they absolutely have to put it in plain language for it to work. You know, you can say this will solve your problem. Make sure you figured out what problem plain language is going to solve.
Thanks, Catherine. And I think a lot of it is convincing, making that business case. So it's so important. So I'm going to combine a couple questions.
Okay.
So this is talking about subject matter experts who might give you very dense content and are just resistant to letting you change their content for fear of changing the intent or meaning. You know, how do you deal with that? Or another person asks, you know, there's a coworker they have that insists on including the minutia in their content. You know, how do you convince even your coworkers who are kind of set in their ways?
It's not easy. As I said on, I think, slide 5, slide 7, plain language is not easy. I think that one of the things I've tried to keep in mind for myself, you know, barring the instant plain language easy button, is that plain language, there's a continuum. And maybe with one of your coworkers, you know, they've written something and it's very dense, and you say, I want to show you something, and you just schedule like Adobe Connect, or you sit down together in a quiet room and you say, these paragraphs really feel too long. There's too much going on. You've got so much important information. I want people to be able to, you know, see all of it. And then maybe what you do is you break apart long paragraphs into shorter. Maybe you add some section headers. Maybe you put some things into bulleted list, but you say, you know, I haven't actually changed any of your writing. Then the next time you start changing some of the writing, but I mean, you say, look, this is all I'm doing to make it, you know, a little bit more digestible. If they're open to food motifs, you know, use those. But, you know, it's really hard to get all of your information because there's so much of it. I'm just trying to put some space in so that people can see how it relates to one or another part.
So it's kind of starting off small.
Start off small. I have been biting my nails over some things, but I'm waiting for the 6 months to be up so I can run the analytics and say, so this is what people are doing. You know, is this where you want them to do? So, yeah.
Okay, so we're about at noon, but we can take a couple other questions, and then if we didn't get to your questions, we'll send Catherine the questions, and she can get back to you on an individual basis. So we talked about writing for, you know, tips for science writers. Do you have any tips for easily displaying foreign language? You talked about tables, and this question came in during that time.
I'm not sure about plain language because I can really only talk about plain English, as it were, because so much of the plain language part, like active voice, I mean, that's a feature of English. There are some other languages that really rely on passive voice in a way, I don't know, because I didn't take that many foreign languages. I think, however, that the basics would apply, like having shorter paragraphs, striving for shorter sentences, if that's possible, making sure you have headers. And then, you know, I'd have to know a lot more about the language before I could, you know, speak any more of that. I'm sorry, I don't know.
Okay, thanks, Catherine. How do you, so we talked about, you know, making information more concise and, you know, applying the plain language principles. This comes up a lot in our webinars about 508 compliance. Can you provide an example of at a time that you've run into this issue, specifically related to writing in plain language and making sure that it's 508 compliant? You know, are those kind of married or?
I think that they're married because I'm thinking in terms of people using assistive technology. If the text is clear, people can find, you know, tab through the different sections, find areas that they want. The biggest 508 plus is the using descriptive link language, which is a few slides ago, yeah. I talked to a guy in our 508 office because people kept sending me stuff with click here, and I'd, you know, make little stabby note motions, and they'd say, but what do we say? And so I checked with the 508 office, and he said, he's the one who said, I use assistive technology. If all you put is click here, then that's all I see. Mm-hmm. If you write something that says, you know, read the 2015 report on kumquats, then I know I'm going to get that. And if I don't want to read that particular report, then I won't reserve that for later. So I think that the descriptive link language is the biggest point about 508-ness, if you will, as I phrase it. But there's the other element of, if it's easy for everyone, it really is easier for everyone, that the screenreader is reading more clearly. The screen reader is reading and getting to the point faster. I mean, what benefits everyone also benefits people using the assistive technology.
Yeah, that's a great example, and I think even for people who don't need assistive technology, it's much easier to scan when you know where the link points you towards.
I want this, I don't want that.
Exactly. So we'll take one more question, and it actually is exactly related to descriptive link language. So this question is, do you use the entire link if they're only going to view the link on the web? So I'm assuming that means you use a portion, or would you make it a long?
Like an entire sentence.
Yeah.
I see. One of the information. I'm sorry. Oh, there we go. I'd lost my cursor for a moment. These were the different options. I didn't make this very clear. I'm sorry. The links would be bring your new patient. I'm sorry. The description would be bring your new patient information packet to your first appointment. And one choice was download the packet. Another link choice was get started with your own copy. And the last option was download it now so you don't forget it. I don't remember offhand which one they chose, but what I might have done myself is simply linked new patient information packet. Don't link a whole sentence. It's like crazy. And I'm going to interject now and say, if you're on the web, don't underline anything unless it's a link. I had the big fight yesterday. Don't underline it unless it's a link, because people will be sitting there trying to click. And if you're just using underscore, yeah, you all are laughing. But seriously, I've been there when I'm trying to click and it's just underscore.
It's frustrating.
It is extremely frustrating because the web has set certain expectations. You know, like I can do this, I can get things done. And we find, or at least I find, when I'm on a website and I can't do it, it's really frustrating. Like there was, I don't even remember, wanted to go someplace over the weekend. Was trying to find the location. No location listed. Don't even get me started on restaurant websites because, that would be another hour. But, people have expectations from their experience, and it is our job as the government to not say, oh, well, we're not going to do that, but to meet them where they are. You can't say, oh, no, we're not going to do that. Yeah, you have to. You have to play in the sandbox, in the web sandbox. You don't get to take your toys and stomp somewhere else.
And I think that's a good point about the expectations that have already been set.
Yeah.
So, our brains are,
now.
Exactly. Mm-hmm. So thank you for sharing that. Before we I'm going to ask one more question, but wanted to let all the attendees know that we put the evaluation link in the chat box. So please give us your feedback. We'll also the slides and Catherine's resources. A question came in about writing for social media, and Catherine actually did a webinar a year or so ago about writing in plain language for social media. So we'll include that and other DigitalGov resources that we've done in the past, and then how to sign up for future plain language classes. So Catherine, in closing, if you could have our attendees come away with one thing from today, what would you tell them, or something that they could implement in their writing right away?
A few weeks ago, I was teaching some GSA people about the principles of plain language, and it was an editing class, and we went through, all the principles, and we started with some of their own work. And at the end of the 4 sessions, someone said, every time I send out a letter or an email or, to someone, I ask myself if I'd want to receive it. And if I wouldn't, I don't send it out until it is. And I thought, oh man, I'm taking the rest of the day off, because that is really it. When you send out something, would you be happy to receive it? Would you know what you're supposed to do with it? Or would you sit there, as I frequently do, and think, Why did I get this? What am I supposed to do? Maybe I need another cup of coffee. I often add that. But really, would you be happy to receive what you're sending out? The golden rule of plain language.
Well, that's a great tip to close with. So thanks so much, Catherine, and
Thank you all
for everyone for attending, and have a great afternoon.